Hey everyone, welcome back to bageltcg. Today we're going to be doing a deck tech for Ice Lexi. In particular, we're looking at Yuki Lee Bender's list that took down Canadian Nationals. I'm actually taking this deck to my local armory tonight, and I'm excited to try it out. Seems very fun. I tried out the other Ice Lexi deck that got top 8 at US Nationals back when that event happened, and that was a good deck, but I honestly think this one is better optimized. Yuki put out a video herself going over the deck in very good detail. I think it's like about a 20-minute video, and I'll have that linked in the description below. But this is going to be just kind of a quick overview. If you want to see like really in-depth card choices, definitely recommend checking out her video. But yeah, I'm just going to quickly go over everything here and do like a quick explanation if you just want to pick up the deck, look at the list, and have fun with it, right? So as Yuki described, you basically have this 54 card main board here, and this core will always stay the same. You're not going to ever change these cards right here in this core. So we have the rainbow of Blizzard Bolt and Chilling Ice Vein, so all 9 of those. Basically, I believe Yuki said you need about 32 arrows in the deck, and you're at 28 here, so you're bringing in at least 6 cards every time because you're at 54, so you need to bring in at least 4 arrows, right? But this is already a pretty good density of them. These are our strongest arrows. Their on hits are very relevant. Even the blues can be fine if they're at the end of a chain and you're giving them +1 with Voltaire. That'll be fine. I will actually, let me show our equipment real quick. We're just running the suite of Voltaire, Shock Charmers, Perch Grapplers, New Horizon, and Fyendal Spring Tunic. I think that's pretty standard. That's probably why I glazed over it a little, but basically, Perch Grapplers are to block, Fyendal Spring Tunic is for the resources, and Shock Charmers is for pumping stuff to get extra, triggers off of it. New Horizon is how the whole deck functions with Voltaire to be able to have 2 arsenals. Anyways, going on here, these cards have very relevant on hit trigger, or on damage actually is the main thing. They're on damage triggers. And don't forget when you're playing the deck that these arrows effects apply to all your attacks for the rest of the turn. So if you fuse a Chilling Ice Vein and then swing with the Bolton Shot, the Chilling Ice Vein effect also applies to the Bolton Shot. So that's another powerful thing. So if you go red Chilling Ice Vein into red Blizzard Bolt, they'll discard 2 or pay 2, and or pay 1 each, I should say, and make a Frostbite. So another powerful thing about these arrows, really. Red Bolton Shot, just a very powerful arrow. You give it +1 with Voltaire, and it comes in as a 0 for 5. So basically just for 1 resource, it's coming in for 5 with Go Again. And if it hits, it reloads, which is something you can kind of mess around with. Like if you didn't have an ice card in your arsenal yet that turn, if you haven't revealed anything to Lexi, you can reload like an Ice Quake or something and still get the flip off of Lexi at that point. So pretty fun stuff you can do there. Just 1 endless arrow right now in the main. There's just, it's doesn't have any of the synergies exactly with all these ice cards. And you don't want too many cards that aren't elemental arrows, because they won't work with, our Weave Ices, for example, or our Pulse of Voltavens. So that's why we only have 1 endless arrow. These 2 Frostfangs are quite powerful. There are 2 for 5 with a very relevant on-hit trigger of the opponent discards a card unless they pay 2. And they're an ice card for fusion. They do a lot of good stuff. They're good at the end of a chain after you've done Go Again with an arrow. So you can go Blizzard Bolt, fused, and then swing with a Frostfang. And like I said, the Blizzard Bolt effect will apply to the Frostfang. So then they're taking the Blizzard Bolt, making a Frostbite, taking the Frostfang, making a second Frostbite, and discarding a card unless they pay 2. Very powerful. Probably don't want to go up to 3, but I think 2 is definitely the sweet spot here. We're playing 6 Ice Quake. Very, very powerful card. This effect also applies for the whole turn. So this says whenever an attack hits a hero this turn, they make a Frostbite. So if you go Ice Quake, Bolton Shot, for example, both of those Bolton Shots will each make make a Frostbite. So Ice Quake's very powerful. We're playing, all the reds and all the blues. We also are playing all 3 lightning presses here, even though we're not a lightning deck, and these are the only lightning cards we have in the whole deck outside of the Pulse of Voltaven. It's just such a powerful effect to make sure our arrows are dealing damage. 0 for +3 on anything that's cost 1 or less means any of these really good Blizzard Bolts or Chilling Ice Veins. If the opponent full blocks them, we can, get in there with the Lightning Press. Three of a Kind is probably the most important card on the deck. It lets you do some really nutty turns, doing like triple arrow or anything really strong like that. It's basically the best card in the deck, and it's the reason we run Voltaire and New Horizon. It's super key. Don't do them together. Do one at a time. If you draw another Three of a Kind during a Three of a Kind turn, you're gonna probably Arsenal that, and then or pitch it if you want, but probably Arsenal that and then do it next turn to have a consistently powerful turns. They don't really work well together because, well, first of all, I guess you can't play it, right? Because it'd be in your hand unless you could reload it. But also, you don't want the effect together. Pulse of Voltaven, very powerful card. It's a 0 for +4 on any of our lightning, ice, or elemental attacks. So, any of these elemental arrows, like I said, doesn't work with these Bolton Shots or Endless Arrows or these Remorselesses, but works on most of our attacks. The main thing is it's a double trigger for Lexi here. So if we flip it over with Lexi, we will get Go Again on our next attack, and they will get a Frostbite. So definitely look to Arsenal this after fusing with it, and then get in that extra power from Lexi here. We're running all 3 Remorseless, just a very solid arrow. It's not like insane, but it has a good on hit against aggro decks, making them lose life a bunch, and it has an okay effect against control decks, right? So Remorseless, it's just a solid arrow. It's just like it fills its role well enough. We've got like our blue ice cards down here outside of these 3 Ice Quakes. We've got 3 blue Winter's Bite. We've got 2 Amulet of Ice, which I was honestly iffy on myself when I saw Yuki talk about it, but playtesting a little, it definitely makes sense. You don't want more than 2 because it doesn't block at all, so that can hurt against aggro decks, but the effect is very relevant, on turns when maybe your turn isn't as powerful, or on turns when you can tell your opponent's not blocking, so they probably have a good hand. You can force them to discard that card with Amulet of Ice. So it's just really good, like, kind of insurance. And it also is a blue ice card that fuses, so it does all the other stuff we want. Similar to why we play Winter's Bite, it's a blue ice card that fuses. And while we play Channel Lake Frigid, it's a blue ice card that fuses. You may think that we're going to be playing Channel Lake Frigid a lot, but in my play testing and like how Yuki said, basically you always want to be trying to get 2 arrows off. And if Channel Lake Frigid is messing with your 2 arrows, like if you can't get 2 arrows off because you're playing it, it's really not worth it. You're just going to fuse it or pitch it then. If you can get 2 arrows and play Channel Lake Frigid on like a big turn, then it's worth playing it. But outside of that, you don't really want to be so much slower and only shoot them for like 5 if it's going to mean you get Channel Lake Frigid. It's just, you're going to lose a lot of pressure actually that way, because a lot of decks don't care about Channel Lake Frigid as much. Frostlock is a pretty absurd card in a lot of matchups. If we can get it to hit against Briar, for example, it turns off almost their whole deck. They can't, I believe, pitch or play anything that has cost 0 if this hits an opponent. Just really strong effect. It's a great arrow. We're not taking it out because that worst case scenario, it's a blue 3 block, but it's a solid ice arrow here. And the last card to go over in the main deck are these 3 red Weave Ice. The effect only does apply to ice or elemental attacks. So like I said, it won't apply to these Remorselesses or Bolton Shots, but it is a really solid effect for all of our ice arrows here, our elemental arrows, and it's going to give them +3, and if their fuse dominates, so if you come in with one of these, Blizzard Bolts, you fuse it, it's going to be getting +3 and dominate. Super relevant effect, and it's a great card for 0. So that's the main deck, 54 cards, which means you need to bring in at least 6 cards. So I'm going to show you basically like the 2 modalities if you're just starting out with the deck and the easiest way to go about it. If you're going up against an aggro deck, which you probably will be, like against a Briar or something, you can bring in these 2 red Endless Arrows here, and then we're going to bring in these 3 Sleep Darts. You'll know when these Sleep Darts are good against what decks. If they have a good hero ability like Briar, who their whole deck functions around, it's good to bring it in. Against a hero like Bravo, who doesn't use their hero ability every turn, and they don't really care too much about the dominate sometimes, you don't really need the Sleep Darts, right? So against aggro decks like Chain or Briar, you're bringing in these 3 red Sleep Darts to try to turn off their hero ability. And then lastly, I believe we're bringing in one other card. Oh, sorry. We're bringing in these 2 blizzards here. So we're only bringing in 1 endless arrow, I believe. Yeah, so we're just bringing in 1 endless arrow. These 2 blizzards to try to turn off their go again. So we're bringing in 2 blizzards, 3 sleep darts, and 1 endless arrow for a total of 6 cards coming into the deck. Against aggro decks, against an aggro deck, you're not going to fatigue at all, so you just want your deck as lean as possible, as small as possible, to make sure you see everything that's powerful as quick as possible. So we're not looking to make our deck really big. What we are looking to make our deck big against is the fatigue decks. So against like Guardian, like Oldhim or Bravo, or decks that we think the game's going to go longer, maybe like a Prism game. If it's a tanky Prism deck that's trying to block a lot, we're going to try to put in our deck up to, I believe, 69 cards, which is a great number. We're going to be putting in these 3 red Cold Waves. We're going to be putting in 2 Endless Arrow, 3 red Flake Out, 3 blue Polar Blast, a Remembrance, and 3 yellow Weave Ice. And the reason we're bringing in these other ice cards is we need to balance out the new increase in elemental fuse arrows. So since we're bringing in these, fused elemental arrows, we are going to be at a lower percentage of ice cards. So that's why we're bringing in those other ice cards. So we have 8 arrows coming in with these 3 Cold Wave, 2 Endless, and 3 Flake Out. And then we're bringing in 6 of these ice cards plus our Remembrance, so 7. So I believe 15 added in, which makes our deck at 69. That's how I've been playing it. I think the only card I didn't mention using in the sideboard here is this Command and Conquer. I don't really know when it comes in, and I don't think it's super helpful. So if you want to save yourself like $100, you don't need to play this single Command and Conquer in the sideboard. I don't think it's really relevant. Just add like Heart of Ice into your deck. I guess that's an expensive card too. Add just like some Null Rune or something that you're probably never going to play. Or just don't put a Cracked Bauble in there. It doesn't really matter. You can put a 3rd Blizzard if you want. I don't think this Command and Conquer is that great, and I don't think Yuki ever even mentioned it in the video for when it comes in. Like, I don't think Yuki mentioned once when they played Command and Conquer, so it's probably a pretty irrelevant card here. But that's the deck, yeah, and it functions really well. You'll see while playing it, your goal is basically to shoot 2 fused arrows every turn. So you're going to be trying to like pitch a card, shoot 2 arrows, fuse an ice card, and then arsenal that ice card to flip on your next turn and play. And you're just going to kind of rinse and repeat that. And that's going to be your main game plan here. I think it's a really fun deck to play. I think it's positioned well against a lot of the aggro decks right now. I think it has a good matchup into most of the Rune Blades that are out there. And I think it even has a decent matchup into a lot of the other decks in the field. I think its only really bad matchup is other ice decks, because Channel Lake Frigid makes this deck hurt a lot because it does double the cost basically of all your Voltaires and your arrows. So instead of your arrow costing 1 to load and 1 to fire, it costs 2 to load and 2 to fire, so 4 total, which makes it basically impossible for our deck to function. So yeah, I think the ice decks hurt us, but outside of that, we should be fine against most of the field. Thanks for watching. Remember to like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time.